Merseyside gangsters and drug dealers, the Clarke brothers, are considered one of the most prolific and notorious and thorough OCGs of their time. Peter Clarke was a former soldier, rising to the ranks of Army Corporal, where he had an exemplary record. Peter was said to have been a former weapons instructor at the King's Regiment. However, a miscarriage of justice put an end to Peter's army career. Peter, whose family were known in the Liverpool area for having gang ties, had been wrongly sentenced for a that had ended in the M of arrival. Now, due to the conviction, he was terminated by the British Army, but by the time Peter was free from his life sentence, Peter wanted to leave the army life in the past and carved out a new path as a crime boss. Peter, then 35 years old at the time, and his older brother, 45-year-old Stephen Clarke, had seized an opportunity to become larger-than-life kingpins. While Peter was disciplined, astute, regimented, and had started to mix with drug couriers that were shipping in large quantities of Class A gear like white, Stephen Clarke was a hulking 18-stone figure who built himself up after joining the infamous Wolfgang pack in the 1980s. Stephen then joined the booming industry of door security, setting up Premier Security, which ran most of the doors in Merseyside. Now, after being on Seal Street in the mid-1990s and the M of their brother Ian, Stephen started to carry his own GUN, which he was arrested for. He then acquired properties by force and began starting weed farms. Now, Peter gave Stephen the confidence to have more ambition, to want more, and in order to create a monopoly in the drug trade, the brothers had to show everyone what they were made of, and that's where they began to recruit at least 14 members to the Clarke brothers gang, and also began to assemble a cache of weapons. So the plan was set. Both Stephen and Peter had built a reputation of being hard men. However, with Peter's army training and expertise in GUNs, the tantamount fear was overflowing. The Clarke brothers, who were originally from the Netherley area of Liverpool, had established a drug network where hundreds of kilos of Class A white was transported from Merseyside to Northern Ireland. Peter handled the transport of white while Stephen continued to run his security firm and also managed the dozens of weed farms. As the Clarke brothers' wealth grew, Stephen expanded their business portfolio. Along with Premier Security firm, they also established construction firms and scaffolding firms, and even window cleaning firms. The businesses were also generating money. However, we all know it was just a front where dirty cash could be cleaned, and Stephen and Peter Clarke, along with their wives Rachel and Marie, could talk the drug trade without prying eyes. The Clarke brothers were so respected and feared that they had connections to the Young Gun gangs via former cage brawler Paul Kelly. The relationship between the Young Gun gang and the Clarke brothers was so pure that it was alleged a house that Peter owned was used as the Young Gun gang's base. Now, Greater Manchester Police noticed that Peter and Stephen were living beyond their means and were growing at an alarming rate. Operation Red Start and Operation Titan was then set up to look into the criminal empire and the financial wealth that the Clarke brothers generated. Firstly, the police began to track the Clarke brothers' movements from September 2011 to December 2012. The Northwest Regional Crime Squad observed Stephen and Paul along with their gang portraying themselves as window blind salesmen, scuba dive instructors, as well as parcel couriers. Now, when police tried to see tax filed for self-employed roles, it was clear that the Clarke brothers, again, were living beyond their means. They were living in 5-bedroom houses in Lancashire. Dubai, France, Istanbul, Las Vegas were their playground. Police could not understand how Paul and Stephen had afforded Jaguars and BMWs and Mercedes, and again, lavish homes. Financial experts had examined the company accounts to Premier Security as part of the investigation. The experts noted that in there were regular payments made to other companies totaling more than £100,000, and the payments were made at least monthly. Police then planted recording devices in Stephen's businesses and even his own personal car. In one recorded conversation, Peter Clarke was heard talking to a worker at the scaffolding firm, saying that he had registered his home in Southport in his wife's name in case police tried to take it off him. In another recorded conversation, Stephen was heard boasting that he was owed £100,000 by someone called Dave, and he was hoping to recover a further £140,000 by a person called Billy. Now, Billy was supposed to be a major dealer in Manchester. With the hidden recording devices in Stephen's car, Stephen talked about having a meeting with former master chef Jay Tinker, where he would supply drer to the chef, Partied. Now, when police arrested the enforcer and dealer for the Clarke brothers gang, Paul Bennett, in May of 2012, it started a sequence of events for the Clarke brothers and the Young Gun gang. Simultaneously, Paul Bennett was responsible for moving military-grade GUNs and also Class A white around the Southport area. Police found 10 kg of 89 purity of white wrapped in cling film and placed under a jacket in the back of a van. Police then went to a lockup in Ainsdale, where astonished police recovered sawn-offs, Glock, Lugers, revolvers, silencers, and also long blades. These items were used to fortify the Clarke brothers' stronghold and ensure that no other gangs or criminals tried to unsettle their business, and that even included Norris Green. Now, because Paul Bennett was so loyal to the Clarke brothers, he actually managed to send an SOS message to Peter Clarke, explaining that the gang had been compromised and the police were raiding the safe houses and lockups. Immediately, Paul packed an overnight bag, fled his home in Tarleton. Peter hid out in Rigby Hall Caravan Park before moving on to Centre Park in Nottingham in the dead of night. Peter then directed a call to a Spanish gangster before heading out to buy dog repellent spray. The hope was that the spray would deter the sniffer dogs from finding the Class A. Peter then travelled back to his home address, where he was arrested by waiting police. During the raid on Peter's home, the 5-bedroom home was stripped of all furnishing. Dozens of police officers went room by room. Drer was uncovered, as well as bank accounts in the name of Jackass. The bank accounts at one point had £1.8 million in, and it revealed that it belonged to Peter. In theory, the Clarke brothers' empire was dismantled due to Stephen being too forthcoming with friends and family in his own home and businesses and his personal car. Now, police summed up Peter's criminality choice as a fall from grace regarding his army career. Stephen was described as a man to show no mercy if you crossed him or any of his family members. Now, when interviewed, Peter and Stephen both answered no comment to all questions, but of course they were found guilty of OCG crimes, including drer. Now, the brothers and the 14-strong gang were locked up for close to 100 years after they admitted their conspiracy into the drer trade. Peter Clarke was sentenced to 16 years in prison after he pled guilty to drer and GUN offences, while Stephen Clarke was jailed for 10 years and 6 months for his role. In the aftermath of their prison sentence, the government and police also tried to claw back at least £2 million in pocket, and if the money wasn't paid back, then the two brothers would face a longer jail sentence. Now, so feared and respected were the Clarke brothers that even people like the G brothers have said that the Clarke brothers were one of the most thorough and honest gangsters in the Liverpool and Merseyside area. They fully believed in what they did, whether that be right or wrong. Stay safe.